Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 218. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News, um, Daniel from the Inscriber, both of them fresh off doing press work for Kovalev, Alvarez, Bivol, Chilemba. Also joining us, Jacob from Jab Hook, Gus from Corruption and Boxing. What's going on, ladies and gents?
It's a hot summer nights edition of the Pound for Pound Report coming your way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hot is the least word you could say.
Well, let's start gently.
Absolutely. For those who are new, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show, podcast, and blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. As long as it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. Check the rider page. You can check out the links to our pages all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and everything. Also, you can find links to where to listen to the show on the SoundClouds and the iTunes and the Google Play Musics and everything like that. Just check out the blog page. Again, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. Check the rider page, and you can find the links to find the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. We're just about everywhere. Let's get the show started this evening, recapping what went down this past weekend. This is going to be mainly a preview show. Not much news and not many fights of note to talk about, or to preview, I should say. Go to Atlantic City. I see Bo has joined us from Scorsese, Low Place. He's joining us as well. Let's head straight to the main event, straight to the fight that everybody's still talking about. Atlantic City doubleheader on HBO. Headliner was Sergey Kovalev defending his WBO light heavyweight belt against Eleider Alvarez. Alvarez scored what can be considered by many as the upset of the year, stopping Kovalev in round 7 to win the belt. Boxing Twitter was abuzz about it all evening long. The conversation continues on throughout the week. Alvarez got off to a good start. First 3 rounds, in my opinion, it can be argued he won 2 of the first 3 rounds and not all 3 rounds. Kovalev asserted himself in round 4 or 5, stepped on the gas, let the power punches flow. But for me, Alvarez, he showed intangibles in this fight. Though Kovalev was hitting him with shots during those rounds 4 and 5, he stood there and took it. And he wasn't really that bothered by it. He struck in round 7. Kovalev was backing away with his hands down. Alvarez struck with the right hand, clean on the button, put Kovalev down, had him spaghetti leg. 2 more subsequent knockdowns ended the fight. Emphatic knockout win by Eleider Alvarez. Highly impressive, in my opinion. I see Boa join us from Truth and Facts About Sports as well. I'm going to go to you first, Gail and Daniel, since you were both at the fight. Again, for full disclosure, Gail was doing some media work for Main Events, the promoter of record. Daniel was doing some press work. He was at the post-fight press conference as well. So I go to you, starting with you, Gail. Your level of surprise at what you saw live at the event. Then Daniel, you can follow up.
Well, I'll put it this way. It wasn't quite as shocking as Marquez knocking Pacquiao out cold face down, but it was close, especially having a close-up seat, watching it. I had absolutely the perfect view, looking essentially right over Alvarez's shoulder as he delivered that punch, and seeing Kovalev literally popped off his feet a few inches, flying back and sitting down hard on his backside. And the minute I saw him deliver that punch, I said to myself, he's done. He's done. And he was done. You could argue that it would have been wiser for him to try to hold. He had a minute left in the round, see if he could get out of the round. But, you know, a puncher is going to try to punch his way out of trouble. It rarely works. It didn't work. And the moment the referee waved off the fight, David Fields, you could argue, could have stopped it after the second knockdown. And I would have had no argument if he had. But he's going to give a veteran champion every opportunity to carry on. He did. Gave him 3 tries. That was enough, despite there being 15 seconds left in the round. And what I recall most, other than the punch, is the absolute pandemonium in that arena that erupted. First of all, the absolute elation from the entire crew, Alvarez's crew, Yvonne Michelle, trainer Mark Ramsey, everybody who was there. And there was a sizable contingent from Quebec and Montreal area, because Atlantic City is a fairly traditional vacation spot for people from that area. So they had a good little contingent of supporters, and they were in a frenzy. And, bless them. It was well-deserved. It was fun to watch, just from a neutral observer fan's point of view. It was super exciting. It was fun to see just how thrilled they all were. And as the rest of the arena was buzzing, the place went nuts. Good news is that was a sellout crowd in what's essentially a new arena to a lot of them, although it's the old Mark Edis Arena. It is now folded in and remodeled into the new Hard Rock Hotel and Casino on the boardwalk. There are seats added, so it's got bigger capacity. For boxing, a sellout is anything north of 5,400, and there were 5,642 seats sold. A really good crowd, a really knowledgeable crowd, a blend of all the folks who've been to fights in Atlantic City over the years and were really excited to get back, along with new folks who were in the area or wanted to see what it was all about. And, beyond the fight, I think the lasting good news is we're going to see a real run of boxing in Atlantic City. Top Rank has a card right next door down the boardwalk at a new resort called the Ocean, which has a little mall in it called Ovation Mall. And I don't think it's talking out of school for me to say that Main Events plans to be back soon, and surely will be back in December, because there is a rematch clause to this fight. And Kovalev seems very intent on exercising it. And I know Kathy Duva, the promoter and CEO of Main Events, would love to put that together. But do credit to Alvarez. He came in beautifully prepared, beautiful condition, and most of all was not intimidated by Kovalev. Not a bit. And that's what it takes to be the champion at that level.
I see the homie 2K. For those who do not know, I've stated in the past that I am a contributor to Three Kings Boxing. Well, the man behind Three Kings Boxing, 2K from 2K Boxing, and Three Kings has joined us. Thanks for joining us, brother. I'll go to you, Daniel. You can talk about the Alvarez's win over Kovalev, and since 2K is new to the show, new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, going to give him the opportunity to give his recap of Alvarez's surprising knockout win over Sergey Kovalev. First you, Daniel, and then you, 2K.
First, it was really, really packed. It started getting packed as soon as around 9 o'clock when the international broadcast started. There was like a middleweight fight, Dominican guy versus a guy from Kazakhstan. It ended after 2 rounds because the Dominican first hit below the belt and then I think just quit on Sewell. So it gave us time, like us in the auxiliary media section, to watch the crowd coming in, and it was surprising actually. Not just the large, obviously Russian contingent and the French contingent, but pure Colombian contingent. They did not have anything Quebec-wise, all wearing Colombian jerseys. That came out for Alvarez. That was very interesting to us, considering that Alvarez up to that night exclusively fought in Canada as a pro. But going into that fight, watching it live, up to the first 6 rounds, it looked like just Kovalev was just a little bit faster with his punches, a little bit faster with combinations, particularly in the 4th round. But we saw Alvarez holding this on the defense. He did hit him pretty good in the 6th round, wobbled Alvarez. And then the 7th round happened. Everybody stood up as soon as the first knockdown happened. The whole press row, the crowd, Joseph's manager that was sitting in front of me. Everybody called it, and nobody got back on the floor, particularly afterwards. In hindsight, I think we all agreed in the press that the fight should have ended after the 2nd knockdown just because of the way he got up. But it was insane how that crowd reacted afterwards because of what happened in the previous fight. We'll talk about the previous fight in a little bit, but the elation of that crowd seeing that type of ending, it felt cathartic in a way for the people around there in Atlantic City because it was a statement to them that boxing, major big league boxing, was back in Atlantic City. And it came off the knockdowns came off from a pretty combination. Mark Ramsey made it a point to, when the press conference, that Yvonne Michel's the one that revealed the name of the combination, Macintosh. And then when we asked Mark Ramsey about it in the post-fight, all he said was he just decided to give code names to combinations so that when cameras are recording them and in the opponents in training camps, when they watch their fights, they won't know what they're talking about. Well, they know what Macintosh is now, which is a nice little feint in the jab, gets a guy off balance, and then the vicious right hand, which landed in Kovalev's temple. And it is very pertinent to know that Mark Ramsey in the post-fight press conference was the first one to bring up the rematch loss. Immediately. Because I think Dan Rayfield's the one that asked about the opponent. He asked about Stevenson. Mark Ramsey immediately said, not Mark Ramsey, sorry, Yvonne Michel is the one that said, well, we have a rematch clause and we fully expect Kovalev to exercise it. And it's looking like that's going to be the case. But it was a good win for Alvarez. It's such a long time he's been waiting for a shot at a title. He finally got the chance to do it. And he showed not only good mettle as far as boxing skills, he showed good defense throughout the fight, but he did show that if you land the right punch in the right area, you're going to win. And let's just say that entire contingent partied very, very hard afterwards, including as the post-fight presser when Kathy Duba brought out Bivol. That crowd was just happy. You got to be happy for the guy. And there's a good chance we'll be seeing Gail, but probably be seeing you again in December.
Yeah, December 8th is already on hold. So make your plans, everybody.
I'll go to you 2K. You and I, we were on Bo's Truth and Facts About Sports show talking about the fight immediately afterwards. Had a little bit of a disagreement. Disagreement maybe be a too strong of a word, but I'm going to use it for now in terms of how the fight was going up until then. Give you the opportunity now to give your recap, your analysis of Alvarez's win over Kovalev. For me, Daniel and Gail alluded to the future of Alvarez, and we will talk about it more in depth in a few. But am I wrong in thinking that the center of the light heavyweight landscape is right at his feet right now? Even if he doesn't go for the Kovalev rematch, every opponent is in his direction. He can fight anybody.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. First of all, I want to say I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Appreciate it. No problem. No problem.
What's up to everybody that's on here? No, you're not wrong at all. You know what I'm saying? He beat the guy that was pretty much inherited king status when Andre Ward retired. So, and him beating that guy that, you know, of course he doesn't have the lineal title or anything like that, but beating that guy that had unofficially inherited king status, yeah, he's the guy to beat now. You know what I'm saying? So you're not wrong in that fashion. Also, I want to expand on something Daniel said, a point that he made about if you're hitting the right spot, it can be damaging. Basically, we talk about it a lot. I say this a lot on my show. I've said it all over social media. In boxing, there's 3 places where you can be hit. You can be hit by a guy with Paulie Malignaggi type of power, right? A guy with Tevin Farmer type of power. Billy Dib just ran into this particular type of shot when they fought a couple weekends ago, right? You've got the temple. You've got the spot below the earlobe at the back of the jaw. And you've got the liver. Those are 3 spots where if you get touched in those spots, your legs will react. And this is exactly what happened to Sergey Kovalev. He was hitting the temple, and that's why you never saw his legs come back after he was knocked down 2 subsequent times, right? So as far as the recap goes, I think the disagreement that you're referring to is basically in a rematch, whether or not Sergey Kovalev would be able to do what he was doing earlier in the fight. And would the fight end up being exactly the way it ended in the second fight?
Right.
Match. For me personally, I was saying that Sergey Kovalev was winning this fight at the time of the stoppage, and it was getting to a point where I'm looking at Eleider Alvarez. I'm like, dude, you're going to have to do something, man, because you're getting beat right now. Early in the fight, the rounds were close. In the middle rounds, Sergey Kovalev did a great job adjusting to the jab of Eleider Alvarez. I think Alvarez had half of an inch reach advantage or an inch reach advantage or something like that, and he used it to basically punch with Sergey Kovalev. Kovalev's the type of guy that needs mid-range distance. He doesn't fight from the outside, and he's not a very good inside fighter either. He's a mid-range type of guy. He needs full extension on his punches, and he throws a lot of straight shots, preferably his trademark punch is that straight right hand. That's the punch that's been killing dudes, you know what I'm saying, his entire career. I mean that literally and non-literally, right? So, Alvarez was doing a great job of punching with him, utilizing his reach advantage, particularly the jab. And, Sergey Kovalev did an excellent job of adjusting to that. We talked about feints. I think Daniel mentioned feints. And Gail, I believe she mentioned feints as well. That's what Eleider Alvarez ultimately did to get the first knockdown. He feinted with that left hand, and he came over the top with the right. And then, of course, Sergey Kovalev had his glove down because he was attempting to throw a jab, but he didn't bring his hands back home, and that left him wide open for the right hand. But earlier in the fight, Kovalev was doing a lot of feinting himself. He was doing a lot of upper body movement, which was Eleider Alvarez was more the responsive fighter. He was waiting to see what Kovalev was going to do a lot of the times early on. And he was looking to rebound or at least have some type of attack after seeing what Kovalev was going to do first. And Kovalev using that upper body movement confused Eleider Alvarez a lot of the time early in the fight, or at least, midway into the fight where he started actually taking over. But boxing 101, man, you never throw the lazy jab. And if you do throw a lazy jab, you got to make sure you're out of range. You know what I'm saying? And in essence, man, you always got to bring your hands home. And that's what happened to Kovalev. If there is a rematch, which Kathy Duve is already on record saying that there will be a rematch, she's fully going to try to exercise that rematch clause. Sergey Kovalev is definitely looking for it, so I expect there to be a rematch. I believe Kovalev will pick up doing the same thing. But then again, as we saw in this fight, one thing that I came on late, of course, so I didn't hear anybody else's take on this, but one thing I haven't heard so far is anybody talk about the stamina of Sergey Kovalev. He's had that stamina problem. Probably watched the first Andre Ward fight, watched the second fight. I've seen him have stamina problems way back when he fought Darnell Boone. So the second time, of course, that was actually aired. So, I mean, stamina has always been an issue with Kovalev. He showed it in the Isaac Chilemba fight as well. That might be something that he's going to need to work on in this second fight if he intends to go 12 rounds and to be able to pick up where he left off before he was knocked out. So, I don't know, man. It's going to be a good fight. I'm looking forward to that rematch. The crazy thing is, man, Dmitry Bivol was really trying to get that unification bout with Sergey Kovalev, man. It's not going to looks like it's not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? And he'll most likely have to look in the direction of Alvarez, which I think is a very dangerous fight for him, especially right now.
Yes, and that's what made this upset so significant because HBO, well, I should say Main Events was already setting the groundwork for a Kovalev Bivol unification bout in December this year on HBO, and Alvarez just ruined that.
Yep.
I'm going to open up for everybody else here. Bo, Gus, uh, Jacob, Lowe, give your impressions of the fight and the your thoughts. As Gail mentioned, as you mentioned as well, 2K, there's already a December 8th date open, and it looks like it's going to be a rematch up between the two. So for everybody else here, starting with Gus and then Jacob, Bo, Lowe, you can comment as well. Quick recap on the fight, and as well as your thoughts on a possible rematch between Alvarez and Kovalev.
Mike, from a betting perspective, there's a methodology that I always try and put in place, and that is never underestimate the hunger, the desire, and the chances ultimately of a young, undefeated fighter, well, not young, but an undefeated fighter, prevailing in boxing.
Young, he's not young. He's 34,
Yeah.
but he's a young 34, no wear and tear really on his body. So I understand where you're coming from.
But fighting for his debut sort of world title. Credit to him, he's been involved in a bit of a chaotic, situation with a mandatory, with I'm not really sure what has transpired, but he got his opportunities. Ironic, it was with Sergey Kovalev, and he executed, his game plan well. I felt fundamentally and strategically he was the better boxer. And his strategy was to be quite conservative. We know he likes to sort of look and unload with his punches, normally second. It had a bit of a mental impact at times, but he got around it, especially in the Bute fight. So, he was maintaining his, but he is very conservative with the right hand. I think his game plan was, try and slowly break down Sergey with the jab in his right hand and body shot, but then start it up with the right hand in the sort of mid to late rounds. He was winning right. He was very calm, very disciplined. Looked quite relaxed. Sergey Kovalev. Interesting that sort of post John David Jackson. He's being trained by Fazluddin Gaib Nazarov's trained. It's a completely different sort of fit for his makeup, both sort of amateur and professional. That sort of coach tends to work more with slick fighters, guys who actually operate on the back foot, lateral movements. Sergey is not really that sort of fighter. He does have a reasonable footwork, but he operates more at mid-range. He's a timing sort of fighter. He's not that sort of slick fighter. So I find that sort of affiliation a little bit interesting, but I couldn't really see anything new he's incorporated that the trainer would have advocated to him. I saw Sergey. We saw, in round 4, 5, and 6, and people sort of tend to exaggerate what Kovalev did in those rounds. He put. I thought it was just a brief insurrection. He had to do something to change the course of the fight because he was getting outboxed and he was getting broken down. So he put on an onslaught, but I felt his punches were he was pushing his punches. I don't think he was relaxed. It was almost like he was compelled to do something. But what we saw at the end of the 4th round, and I think it was a pivotal moment, we saw Eleider Alvarez, a little bit of defiance, come back with a left-right, straight bang on Kovalev's jaw. And I felt for that moment, Alvarez, he didn't panic. He didn't resort to, running or holding excessively. He just tried to, weather the storm. Didn't look hurt, and he came back with some hard punches, which temporarily buzzed Kovalev up. So I felt that really was the turn of the tide, and round 5 and 6, Sergey just expanded far too much energy, and with a fighter who's synonymous with, fatigue, and that fatigue was even evident when he was an amateur. Even in 3-round fights, he'd be getting tired in the second round. So it's always been, you know, a genetic trait within his makeup. Heavy-handed punches generally are, and if you take them into deep waters, then they're going to be spent. And I think that was Alvarez's strategy, to try and take him deep, knowing that once he's tired, not only does his workload suffer, but his punch accuracy, his power as well tends to dissipate a little bit. And we saw what happens, and you know, his hands begin to drop. And Alvarez took those chances, and you know, caught him with, you know, employing some good feints, some good right hands, and it's pretty ironic. Somebody who's not really synonymous with being a puncher, and according to him, doesn't really have any knuckles, all of a sudden is just, you know, taking out these people. But Kovalev has also had, you know, chin problems, Mike. You know, he's been dropped, amateur professionals, just has no punch resistance. His head just gets snapped back with jabs. Maybe it's a case of old age, a little bit of wear and tear, whatever. You know, poor conditioning. He's not really lived a life in between fighting as well. So all of them, when you sort of consolidate all of those factors, yeah, it just did it. And I
want to add to that, man. I don't think it's actually old age and conditioning at all. It could be conditioning a little bit, but you know, remember he was dropped by a right hand from Blake Caparello. And also Darnell Boone in their first fight, he dropped him 2 or 3 times. So you're absolutely right with Kovalev. He doesn't have very good punch resistance, and his chin has always been questionable.
Chin or body. Let's keep in mind now, this is the same Kovalev who stopped sparring sessions with Triple G because of the work Triple G was doing to his body.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Continue on, Gus.
Yeah, not much more you can really go on, Mike. You know, I've always felt, unfortunately, Kovalev was a HBO manufactured height job, and you know, it is transpired. So credit to Alvarez. You know, he took his opportunity, and many congratulations to him.
Bo, Lo, Jacob, your thoughts on the fight? Are you there, Bo?
Yeah, I'm here, Mike. I didn't realize.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I didn't realize the mic was on. You know, Mike, you know, everybody pretty much done said it all or gonna say it all. I think the thing for me was there was some telling moments of the fight. I think also what you saw was you saw a challenger who, if you look at maybe perhaps his last 3 fights or last 4 fights, was actually preparing this dude for this moment right here. If you look at the gauntlet that he had to go through to get here, you know, it was preparing him for this. So he came into this fight already ready, already knew what he had to do, and you had and you also had a guy whose killer instinct light switch just stayed on. He came out, you know, like you say, he started establishing the jab. Kovalev, I believe, poured a lot into that 4th round. Because that's when he really started punching hard, really started digging. He put a lot into that 4th round, so much so that you could see his work rate started to decrease a little bit over the 5th and 6th. And he was, like we talked about his condition, he started breathing heavy. But I want to point something out that a lot of people probably missed. Was in the 6th round. There was a round when Alvarez was in the corner and Kovalev was trying to dig to him. And Alvarez hit Kovalev with a vicious 1-2 combination to the body. And Kovalev immediately leaned on Alvarez to initiate a break from the ref. And then after that break, he bagged up, started bouncing up and down. And I said, he's hurt to the body, because that's what you do when you get hurt to the body. You start to get your legs going to bouncing, you know, to get that pain to, you know, disperse out of you. So he started bouncing and wanted to just stay on the outside period after that. And I said, okay. And I watched the later Alvarez as he was setting it up. He threw a couple jabs to the body and saw Kovalev was leaving his hand directly down there and was forgetting all about the head. Of course, he still has sort of a robotic style where when he's protecting the body with the head, he's not ducking the chin down behind the shoulder. He keeps his head up high. And Alvarez just feinted and caught him, you know? So, I mean, and now I do want to say though that I'm gonna say this because I say this every time I talk. I no longer want to hear anybody say anything to me about how long Wilder got or how long Anthony Joshua got, because this same referee has been consistent on giving the champion a chance to prove and go out on his shield. He's been consistent with that. He did it in this fight right here too. So props to Eleider Alvarez. I mean, there's not much more you can say. You know, after all the crap and mess that he had been going through, you know, found his passport like some people can't, and came over here and took a title and championship. Now, if there's a rematch, I don't know. The thing is, if there's a rematch, and because Kovalev really wasn't getting beat, I mean, he was actually in the fight winning. So if we have a rematch, I think what we're going to see is Eleider Alvarez is coming in this on all-time high, and he's also coming in knowing that if I touch this dude, I have the chance of putting him away. Now that sometimes can work against you because you can get in and get too eager, and that sometimes can work for you. I think a guy like Eleider Alvarez, with the poise and everything that he showed by allowing the knockout to come to him, I think he'll let this work for him, and he'll just implement the same game plan, because if he was watching the fight and he was calculating in his head to fight, like he said, I knew it was time to get him out of it because I felt his punches started getting weaker. And if Kovalev don't correct his conditioning, if he doesn't in his mind, if he doesn't fix whatever it is in his mind, because immediately when he went down, he went back to the Andre Ward fight. So Kovalev has to get over something physical and something mental, as to where a guy like Eleider Alvarez, he don't have to get over anything. He's the guy coming in with all the advantages. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but I applaud him if he takes the rematch. And I'm one that don't think Bivol is ready. I think Bivol is too green because, like I mentioned earlier, Bivol turns the killer instinct switch off. He did against Chilemba. Once he realized, oh, well, this guy's durable, he's going to stay there, he turned the killer instinct switch off. Well, you can't do it against a guy like Eleider Alvarez. He keeps that killer instinct switch on, and I believe hand speed and athleticism, he can match Bivol for that. So it's going to be interesting to see, man. The light heavyweight division is being shaken up, and I like that.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I want to thank EJ Boxing Live, 122. If I can get her name right, 122-4529, aka Lisa, for joining us on the show. Olaf the Mighty. Thank them all for listening and commenting in the live chat. Going to go to you, Lo, and then you, Jacob, quickly your thoughts on the fight of Alvarez's stoppage win over Kovalev.
First, gotta talk about the Superman Stevenson curse, of course.
Let's not go there.
No. Come on, real quickly. It made Kovalev on that boardwalk. That night he beat B-Hop. That was the last fight there. It made him that night. B-Hop took less money to fight Kovalev. Boom. You get to fight a 50-year-old, you beat him. Then it ended you on the same place, you know? Symbolism, just a beautiful thing. But at the end of the day, Eleider Alvarez, he got a shot he wasn't supposed to get, and he took full advantage of it. You know, I give him full credit. I rate the man pound for pound number 4. He got a bigger win than Lomachenko. He got a bigger win than Terrence Crawford, bigger win than Canelo, bigger win than Gennady Golovkin, performed better than any of them. Hell, he just put himself in fight of the year contention as far as I'm concerned. If he knock his ass out again, in what'd you say? What did Gail say? December
8th.
Yeah, you knock his ass out again, I have no problem giving the Eleider Alvarez fight of the year. I think he does have some stamina issues though, but he bit down. And it's another thing nobody mentioned. Man been out the ring 14 months. 14 months. No politics on his side in this one. And I can appreciate that. He was taken from the WBC mandatory and he had nowhere to go. Marcus Brown gets in trouble and kicked out the fight. He comes in, 14-month layoff, and that's just an amazing thing. I mean, there's nothing else to say about the performance as far as, you know, his jab. Definitely wearing Kovalev neck down. Kovalev got the weakest neck above anybody over 160, maybe. I mean, you hit that, he doesn't protect it, don't tuck his chin, so therefore you hitting him and it's just snapping. And you can't continue to get hit like that at the age of 35. Hell, you can't get hit like that at the age of 28. It ain't a good idea. And Eleider Alvarez, you know, feigning more jabs at him, come over the top, end his life, end his night. You know, I agree. The second knockdown could have been a stoppage. As far as the point that Bo made about the champions getting more chances, I think that's because the champions are always on that A side. You know, he was in New Jersey. Wilder was in his place in New York where PBC is running things. I just feel like if there was Eleider Alvarez and he fell on his face on that second one, he wasn't getting no shot to win another title, whether he was winning the fight or not. And the scorecards, I think they revealed that they were horrible and they were 5-1. So when you mention grabbing a passport, that's why people don't grab passports, and that's including any fighter. I heard every scorecard had Kovalev winning like 5-1, and I think Kovalev won. What was it? Probably the first, the fourth, and then the fifth, or maybe it was the fourth, fifth, and the sixth, or something like that. Alvarez won about 2 or 3 rounds in there, and it was a close fight. And Eleider he snuck him. He snuck him, and he snuffed him out. And that's what Kovalev gets. He's never fought punches. Pascal would be the biggest puncher he ever fought, and we know Pascal doesn't set up knockouts. He looks for one big shot. The jab, the body work of Eleider Alvarez put it all together, and he's not a huge puncher. He's never going. I don't think he probably won't knock another top fight out again. But
he's only got a 50% knockout rate. So, I mean, he's not a big puncher. It was more so the placement than the actual force.
No, it was placement and the placement and breaking him down. He broke his neck with that jab. Kovalev could have wore a neck brace from the jab alone after the fight, and that's just simple as that. And the body work coming along with it, and then he clipped him with the good one, and Kovalev couldn't take it. And I think Kovalev never fought punches for a reason. That's just my thoughts. It's not durable. Just because you can dish it out don't mean you could take it. And he can't take it. And I don't think he needs to go to a damn rematch. But at the end of the day, HBO ain't going to build no 35-year-old fighter and let you take 2 or 3 tune-ups, buddy. So, they about to cash you out, dog. That's how I see it.
Kovalev is not top 4 pound for pound, but he is a contention for fighter of the year.
Yeah,
Alvarez. But he may be the pimp of the year, given how he's won free money and still came back and win the belt. But I'm just saying, I'm going to Jacob. Quickly, your thoughts on the fight?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everybody said, broke down the fight really well. Just a couple things. I mean, I don't think it's as big of an upset, maybe in the way that it happened, but I mean, I know a lot of people didn't pick Alvarez, but I think that he was, he had enough skill and showed that he was a good enough fighter that he could, potentially be competitive in this fight. But it was all basically, I think the things that were against him was, does he have the power to put Kovalev out? Does Kovalev, we know he has power. And so it was just, we all thought, I think a lot of people thought it was a matter of time before he eventually caught Alvarez. But I mean, big win for Alvarez. He totally deserves it. Kovalev, it's kind of poetic justice in a way, for at least for me. Kovalev in the last few years has kind of rubbed me the wrong way in his actions and comments, and then what he did to John David Jackson. So I know he was probably smiling, watching that fight. And I think Kovalev's biggest problem, or one of his biggest problems, is that he thinks that he knows he doesn't need anybody. I think he kind of has that like cockiness to him. And I think as he was rising through the ranks with him just relying on on his power, not to say that he doesn't have some skills, but I think because he was knocking everybody out, and he had this moniker of the Crusher, and he was just running through the division, and then just it seemed like in John David Jackson's comments about him was that he didn't think that the trainer really adds too much, that he kind of knows what to do. But when he got knocked down that first time, he made a rookie mistake in the sense that he just got up right away. He should have got to one knee and took an 8 count to not only talk, but to kind of collect himself. And I think that second knockdown was disastrous, because that left hand that landed, it totally spun his neck around. And I mean, that was the that was the nail in the coffin, in my opinion. But again, he didn't hold. He just put his gloves up and I guess try to see if he can get out of it. But I mean, he was seriously hurt, and I don't think that a rematch goes too much differently. I mean, I think maybe Kovalev in a way has been, with the Ward fight or the second Ward fight, and his age and just all the turmoil he's been through. I think maybe it's just he's time for him to pass on in the sense. I think he could beat Bivol. I wasn't too impressed with Bivol, but at the end of the day, Alvarez did what he needed to do. I think the rematch is probably going to end pretty similar. And I don't know. I mean, main events is going to be hurting because their biggest attraction is down. So but thanks for having me on the show, Mike. I gotta head out. I got a train to catch, but thanks.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Thanks for joining us, Jacob. Is that Cesar from Three Kings?
Yeah, that's him.
What's going on? It's like the damn near the entire Three Kings boxing crew's on the show tonight. This is a loaded episode. Give you an opportunity right now to catch up with talking Alvarez and his upset win over Kovalev. Quickly, your recap of what went down during that fight.
Honestly, I think Bo, myself, and Corey, we were talking about that a little to touch up a little bit on what Jacob said. Kovalev, and like sometimes, and it's not just Kovalev; it's a lot of boxers. Sometimes the success gets to their heads, and I mean, after those two revitalizing, losses to Andre Ward, sometimes that hunger and desire just isn't there. Now, I know John David personally, so, in speaking with him concerning about this situation and overhearing, the rumors through other people, mutual contacts, it seems like the past 2 years in particularly, Kovalev has started to get real big-headed and really wasn't listening in camp. It didn't always start off that way. Now, when Kovalev first came down, he was with John David, and they had a assistant trainer, which also now trains Sullivan Barrera. His name is Derek Santos. Okay, trainer Derek Santos, and Derek Santos actually was the first guy to kind of get cut from the camp. Anyways, long story short, I seen it happen a while, from the past. Now he probably was more motivated to fight Ward, but after he lost, honestly speaking, and it changes, that's a bad sign. Usually when you change your camp and your direct surroundings. So, I kind of feel like Eleider Alvarez, his resume is pretty impressive. Doesn't have really big top-notch guys, but I think he's only fought 3 guys in 24 or 25 wins with losing records. Everyone he's fought has had, significant winning records, not like winning by, 50% or 51%. I mean, this guy has fought guys undefeated, and he's a true blue-collar boxer. And I just feel like this fight was at the right time, and he was at the right place at the right time type of fight.
Okay. Gail mentioned kind of the future of both Kovalev and Alvarez during her breakdown. Going to open it up for here, and everybody else has kind of alluded to it. Looks like there's plans for a rematch in December, right? December 8th, I believe, is the date that they're holding out at the MSG, I believe it was, Gail?
No, that'd be back in Atlantic City.
Be back in Atlantic City, cool.
Back at the scene of the crime.
Okay, cool. Going to open up kind of the dialogue that 2K and I, the back and forth we had on Bo's show in terms of how things would go in a rematch. And 2K presented, correct me if I'm wrong, brother, a scenario where Kovalev could do essentially the same thing and win, because only if he doesn't get caught with a shot. My counter was that I don't trust Kovalev's psyche,
right?
And to Gus's point, I don't trust his conditioning. In this fight, I always felt, even though Kovalev came on in rounds 4, 5, and 6, I always felt there was going to be an opportunity for Alvarez to respond because of Kovalev's issues with conditioning, physical conditioning. I see the same thing in the rematch. To Low Place's point, issues with the neck, issues with the chin, punch resistance, I think is going to rear its ugly head again in the rematch. Couple that with the psyche of Kovalev, who was still in the building blocks, building himself back from the Andre Ward defeats. This is another crushing blow. So I'm just going to open up for everybody here who wants to opine. Should this rematch happen, your thoughts on a rematch between Alvarez and Kovalev?
Well, let me follow up on that real quick. So the psyche thing was the big elephant in the room. That's the part where we actually agreed on when that point was brought up. So, the mental aspect of the sport is probably always say 95%. Physical is actually 5%. So if Kovalev's psyche is not in the right place in this rematch, then yeah, absolutely, Alvarez will do the same thing that he did in this fight, maybe even worse and maybe even earlier. But if Sergey Kovalev, if you just watch exactly what he did in that fight and how he was starting to pull away right before he got knocked out, if he can actually come back into the rematch doing those same things and have the correct psyche in which he doesn't get caught the same manner he did with his hand down, throwing a lazy jab, there's a possibility he could win this fight. That's pretty much what I was saying.
Okay, going to open up for everybody else who wants to respond. Your scenarios on a possible rematch between Alvarez and Kovalev. Your thoughts?
I guess I'll open up. So to talk about that, and talking about the psyche, I think that is the most important aspect. I feel that at a certain point, kind of reiterating my last comment, at a certain point, boxers get satisfied. They're no longer hungry. And I don't know, man, something inside me, and like I said, I've been saying this for a little while now, Kovalev no longer has that hunger. Eleider Alvarez, on the other hand, he has shown nothing but determination and hunger, and the world is at his fingertips. So basically what I'm trying to say, at this point in both their careers, it seems like Eleider will want it more. Now, there's no arguing that, Kovalev is the more seasoned of the two. He has a more extensive pedigree, and, he is probably the more skillful out of the two. But at this point in their career, Eleider Alvarez is just sheer determination. And the guy can hit like a mule too, and we're talking about the light heavyweight division where, this is one of those divisions, I think probably the first division where power can't overcome skill. And with that being said, I mean, I honestly think that, there's not much of a difference if these two guys were to fight again. Now, we're not talking about an Andre Ward type of guy who can figure out and make adjustments. This is Sergey Kovalev, who's also somewhat of a, action-packed fighter to a degree. The guy looks for knockouts. So, I don't know, man. I think Eleider will probably stop him again.
Gus, Bo, the question was asked to Roy Jones after the fight by Jim Lampley. Is Kovalev done at age 35? In short, do you agree?
I don't think he's done, but I think stylistically, it's a difficult proposition because an Alvarez now with injection of more confidence and self-belief than what he had anyway. And if he maintains his conditioning, because he came into shape here, he looked in good shape. So it looks like he had a very good training camp, despite a significant layoff and so much chaos regarding his sort of promotional issues and his mandatory position. So if he maintains that for the rematch and takes it just as seriously, but with Sergey Kovalev, Mike, now no doubt he's going to be extremely tough, no doubt about it. He's had a lot of defeats in his last whatever. I mean, is that 3 defeats in his last 5 or something? He'll probably realize he's not a stupid man that one more defeat and it is effectively over. Period. So that may motivate him, but what I see, Mike, is when fighters are under adversity, when they're so used to bullying opponents, and they simply don't know what to do, and they just sort of capitulate like that. Those sort of deficiencies is not something you can rectify, because that mentality has been built up. As long as he's gauged that he's been a puncher at a very early age, he's just had that sort of bully mentality, and that's exactly the way he's fighting. Your instinct and sort of muscle memory takes over, but it's the cerebral fighters that are able to make those adjustments, and I don't really see it in him. He's not that sort of fighter. Once he can't maintain his power or something goes, then the rest of his boxing arsenal simply goes as well. He can't go on to a plan B or C. He doesn't have any. He can't switch hit. He can't go laterally. He can't try and fight at long distance. He's had difficulties with so many southpaws. That's one deficiency he's never corrected since the amateurs, because he was having difficulties with southpaws in the amateurs. So he's had more than sufficient time to correct that. But up against his countrymen last time, he just simply didn't have a clue. So I'm not sure whether he has that capacity to learn as well, Mike. So in the rematch, I can see Alvarez, replicating what he did here, and perhaps even quicker.
Go to you, Bo. Low place, and then Gail, you can finish this discussion off.
Is Kovalev done? That's kind of hard to say, right? For me, only because he was not in a position where he was just getting beat real bad in that fight. He got cold cocked. He got caught because, like I said, I felt like in the middle rounds he started to pull away a little bit. So I don't know if he's done just yet. I'd have to see what happens in the rematch. I have to see how he looks when he comes in. If he comes out in the rematch and he's just looking like mentally he just can't let it go, then yeah. But for right now, for me, no, I can't say that he's done, because in that fight, he was competitive, and he just got caught, and it disconnected and it short circuited his legs. But if it does turn out in the rematch, based off of whatever we see in that rematch, then we can make a better assessment. But if you look at the light heavyweight division, I can put it like this: it's not going to get no easier for him, because if you look at the division, the division is getting hot, and now that people are going to be questioning his chin, people are going to be questioning his stamina, even questioning his ability to take shots to the body. That's what everybody's going to be trying to do now to him, is try to get inside, rough him up, and test him mentally. So for me, no, I'm gonna see what happens in the rematch.
I omitted Daniel. My apologies. So low place, Daniel, and then Gail. To finish this off, should the rematch occur? Your thoughts, and do you agree with Roy Jones' assessment that Kovalev is done?
HBO selling them out, man. You reach a certain age, you're not a good product to push no more, especially with 2 knockout losses. You already see he doesn't do better in rematches before, but you're gonna push him right back into another one where he got knocked out even worse at a later age. It's like that though. Boxing gets you in and boxing gets you out. He finally fought a dude with a longer reach than his that wasn't no old man. And I wrote this in the chat. It don't, like Bo said, don't get no easier at 175. All these guys are long punchers. They can punch, they can box. Some of them we just got to see if they got any heart, if they got any balls when they get, when the competition step up. But everything else, they looking beautiful. So you ain't gonna go around fighting no Billy Dib winning no title. It ain't no Pascal to defend against no more. No, he's not. And let's say that B-Hop was done when he fought him. Pascal was done in the first fight. They wasn't pulling the trigger. Pascal couldn't fight more than 2 rounds. Kovalev ain't done like that, but he's done in the sense that them people around him they gonna go in there every night with a 50-50 shot to kick his ass. And every time we seen somebody with a 50-50 shot, we seen him get his ass kicked. So that's, in that sense, possibly he's done. But I would not ever be surprised if Eleider Alvarez is the one on his damn back in December. That's how good that division is. The best one in all of boxing. And I kind of do want to see him knock Eleider Alvarez out. I would like to see that. That's just my thoughts.
I would ask why, but I'm not going to go there.
Just to have a
Daniel,
big mix up in boxing.
Daniel, and then finally Gail.
I would say I agree if it's Kovalev's time at the top echelon of light heavyweight. Because the rate of the champions now, it should tell you that it's a tough road for Kovalev. But leave Stevenson aside, we already know the history. Bivol, that's the match that HBO wanted. It's the match that they hope to build because they were recording Bivol for the 2-day documentary that they do for fights in this turn. That's probably needs to fight to make, but then the rematch with Alvarez is probably going to be the more bigger option. And then you have his real natural nemesis in Artur Beterbiev. So you have a choice between a man who you already have a history with that for the sake of keeping the show moving, we're going to keep the show moving. A kid that's very young and who readily admits he's not completely ready for going all out, but rematching the guy that just knocked you out and then facing the guy you literally despise. So those are the fights that Kovalev wants to get into the top, and all of them now pertaining to the aura that he had, it is gone. It was gone, and you could tell it was gone from Alvarez in the second round when he was the one that dragged Kovalev to the ropes and almost toppled him over at the end of that round. So I would say at the top, yeah, he's pretty much done. He could probably fight still, be in the fringes, but I don't think Kovalev wants to do that, particularly when he's young. His son is very young still, so he probably wants to keep some level of sanity for his son. And ultimately, HBO, like I said, and Kathy Duba do have another horse to ride on now. We're Russian horse and Bivol. So I'd say his time at the top is over, even at the top. Overall, no, because he can still give a lot of guys problems, but at the top, it does seem to be over.
Hey, real quick, I missed the point. Somebody said Kovalev's not hungry. I totally disagree. He's 35 years old. His first opponent was an A-level prospect in Marcus Brown. I think he's very hungry, or was at least, but sometimes the food just don't taste good no more. And to Daniel's point about having Alvarez on HBO one more time, if he knocks him out again, I don't think Alvarez gonna have any commitment to HBO, and he's still with Heyman, and I think they just gonna take that belt, and Bill was gonna be in La La Land if he's depending on Kathy to promote him on on HBO alone.
Interesting. Wrap this up for us, Gail.
I think Kovalev is hanging on the edge of being relevant. Daniel, I think you made a very incisive point, which is outside the realm of boxing. And we forget that these guys do have lives outside the ring. He does have a young son and a daughter on the way, about to be born on his son's birthday in October. And he is a very devoted father. He's also started his own promotion company for another revenue stream, because God knows there seems to be just this endless supply of these young prospects coming out of Eastern Europe and Russia. And Kovalev has a very good pipeline, to pluck from, should he want to go the route of Oscar De La Hoya eventually, or partnering up with Duva, which he is right now, is the business end of the equation. I think he'll fight a few more times. I think that's it. I do think Beterbiev might, be the crowning achievement. He dislikes the man so much. Beterbiev has a fight scheduled on October 6th. Timing is very parallel and interesting. He's fighting Callum Johnson in Chicago on October 6th.
You mentioned Beterbiev, Gail. Excuse me for interrupting. But didn't this guy just turn out an opportunity to fight Kovalev?
Oh, that would be something like that, yeah.
Did it
So
twice.
he's
did it
chosen
twice.
to fight Callum Johnson instead in Chicago, which should, that's an interesting fight. I'll entertain that. We'll see what happens. Probably the man most upset after Kovalev, believe it or not, is Dmitry Bivol, who was looking for the big showdown, the changing of the guard, pick up a couple of more belts, and then, wave his finger over across at whoever holds the WBC belt at the time he does it. His team, and Daniel, I think you'll back me up, while they were happy at the news conference, they were very subdued. And they were just as upset to see Kovalev lose as Kovalev and Kathy Duva and Egis Klimas were. It also proves that Egis is not entirely invincible. I mean, he's probably gunning for another Manager of the Year, honor this year, at this point in August. But that was really the first blemish at all for him this year. Kovalev's trainer, Abor Torsim Pilatev, I think, Gus, you're right. He's used to training a little bit different type of fighter. He'd like to see Sergey pick up those skills. And I think it's just been, a different thing. He's used to dealing with these young guys. Abor trained most of the younger Russians, Eastern Europeans on the undercard. And of course, he and Egis and Kathy are hoping that there's a breakout star in that group to take over. They're not there yet, though. They're in no way cooked, despite the fact that Bakram Nursultanov, or Bakram, pardon me, I'm switching names around, Bakram Murtaliev did have a 41-second knockout. In fact, he was pissed because he only got 41 seconds of TV time. In Eastern Europe, he was mad. But they're also hoping for Marim Nursultanov to be a star, but these guys aren't there yet. So there's going to be an interesting lull, as the guard passes, and Bivol isn't quite there either, as good as Bivol is. And that's the perfect transition to now talk about that co-main event we saw.
Indeed, let's do that. I'll go to
Mike.
you. Go ahead, Lo.
One quick point. I was on a hangout and I told them dudes, I said, I think Kovalev needs the DAZN app. Jesse Vargas can get 1.5 million fighting whoever he's fighting and everybody. Kovalev needs to go there as an older man. That's how you don't have to go through the ringer like HBO is making you do. Eddie
he is far too loyal to Duva and Klimas. It'll never happen.
But
plus remember, he has a promotional arrangement with them. He was a co-promoter on that fight. What's gonna happen?
To reiterate on what you guys are saying and discuss the hunger factor with Kovalev, see, you come to a point in your career where you're starting to make money, you develop your fame, you are starting a promotional company, and things start crossing your mind like, do I still want to get in the ring with these killers, possibly get hurt, possibly take permanent damage, go through the difficultness of camps? Because camps are hard. Obviously, we all know that. But, camps are gruesome, time away from your family, sacrifice, and all the effort that you put into it. You get to a certain point where you're just like, maybe it's time for me to turn that leaf, and I just can't do this anymore with these young pups who are hungrier than you. So with that being said, that was the reference in terms for Kovalev. He's still hungry for money, but the difference is now he can make that money through other avenues, which are a lot less physical than having to get in the ring and fight these killers. So this rematch would, like I said, the heavyweight or the light heavyweight division is definitely a toss-up. Anything can happen in boxing. It's something about that will and determination. We've seen that time in and time out. I guess Maidana versus Broner is a great example. You had a guy with extreme talent and obviously a little bit more popular than the other one, but that determination and of course size, but determination at the end of the day really took over and won him that fight.
And a long discussion here about Alvarez Kovalev. Let's move on and talk about the undercard of that main event. Dmitry Bivol defending his belts against Isaac Chilemba. Bivol winning by decision. I'm going to start the conversation with you, 2K, and then Daniel. A brief summary of the fight. And the question to both of you gentlemen is, based on what you saw, given the upset of Alvarez over Kovalev, do you think a Dmitry Bivol, is ready for the Eleider Alvarez that we saw in the main event, who upset Kovalev?
Well, I've already answered that question. That's going to be a no for right now. And basically, you know, it's really a testament to the fact that Eleider Alvarez has been groomed to be the person that he is. He was groomed to have that upset that he had against Sergey Kovalev. I've said time and time again regarding the whole Stevenson situation and the step-aside money and all of that. I said that if Stevenson actually waits for this guy to gain experience, which he did against Lucien Boutet and then Jean Pascal, that he was going to end up being a problem in the division. That's exactly what happened. Right after Pascal was, of course, a Kovalev fight with, a year and 2 month layoff, and he still pulled that off the way he did. So where Alvarez is at right now, I don't see anybody beating him, especially the way Bivol didn't really handle Chilemba the way that I expected him to. I expected him to beat Chilemba in the same fashion Alexander Gvozdyk did, but he was unable to do that. And on top of being unable to do that, I saw him take his foot off the gas pedal, probably going into maybe the 9th, 10th round. It became a situation where he understood that he wasn't going to get this guy out of there. So he said, well, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and, cruise to victory, go ahead and get that 12-round unanimous decision. That's something that I don't like to see in fighters that have an opportunity to put a guy away when at least when they have the skill set to do so. But it could have been a testament to him being a cerebral type of fighter. I mean, Bivol is smart. I wouldn't give him an A-class brain just yet, but he is a smart young fighter. But at this point in time, just where Eleider Alvarez is after this type of win that he had achieved, I don't think Bivol right now can beat an Eleider Alvarez. Give it maybe 1 or 2 more fights.
Same question applies to you, Daniel.
All right. Well, going to the final on the co-main event, the way it started to shape up, it was Bivol tried to get him out very early in the first 2 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Try to make a point, trying to say, because this was a barometer for him, because Chilemba has fought both Alvarez and Kovalev. He took Kovalev to the distance, and you can argue that he was beating Alvarez prior to that elbow injury. So it was a good barometer for him. But what started happening, and I pointed this out to a couple of people in press row in the UK, and I actually pointed out to Joe Smith's manager, and I'll say something about that a little bit later. But from the 5th round on, what Chilemba started to do is not let Bivol get the inside foot all the way in. So whenever Bivol threw the combination he was supposed to, there wasn't the force that he probably wanted. And on top of that, when Bivol hit to the head, Chilemba immediately countered to the body. Or when doing exchanges, Bivol was landing to the head while Chilemba was landing to the body. And that did bother Bivol for a little bit, not to mention, like I said, the foot placement. But he did enough because it reached a point where even though that right hand was open all day for Chilemba, he just didn't have to pop to knock Bivol down. And that's ultimately what happened in the judges' scorecards. I agreed with the one judge that had it 116, 112. I gave Chilemba 4 rounds. And this is something I actually like about Dmitry Bivol, like in the post-fight press conference. He's like Jaime Munguia in the sense that they're both honest fighters about what their deficiencies are. And even though, like, I asked him, like, about Bertubiev, he says he'll fight any light heavyweight, but he says he understands that there is defensive gaps that Chilemba showed him that he needs to work on. So he understands that Chilemba exposed something in him. And interesting, like I said, an interesting tidbit. Chilemba actually wasn't supposed to be the guy that was supposed to be in the ring with Bivol that night.
Yeah, he wasn't.
It was supposed to be Joe Smith.
Yep, exactly.
But from what I've gathered when I talked to his manager, he said they thought that fight was too tough for him coming back from that hairline fracture in the jaw. So they just had him take an easy fight earlier on. Mohegan's Son, he won the first round. But I interviewed him after the Bivol fight, and he is salivating just over the fact that Chilemba was able to land that right hand on Bivol all day. And he said, you could tell in his eyes, he's thinking, if Chilemba can land that, I can land it and take this guy out. So he may not be completely ready, and I think Bivol understands that. He's mentioned it, like it did in 2017, even when he got the title, due to Andre Ward retiring, that he tells him, I'm not ready. So he's going to need a couple of other fights to unify. They wanted a unification fight. This actually favors Bivol in a way because now he doesn't have to be rushed into it. He can get a couple of other defenses in while he gets ready for the unification fights, rather than be thrown immediately to the wolves against Kovalev should Kovalev won.
I want to continue the discussion first with Cesar, and then with Gus and Gail, and then finally Bo. I'm going to start with you guys with the second part of the two-part question I asked 2K and Daniel, and then add an additional question, and that is, do you think that Bivol is ready for the likes of the Alvarez we saw? If not, this is the second additional question. If not, where do you think, and Daniel kind of alluded to, where do you guys think, first with you, Cesar, where do you think that Bivol will go?
Look, man, honestly, Bivol is a very, 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 very smart guy. I think he is a complete light heavyweight, probably one of the most complete in the division. I'm not going to really use that Chilemba fight as a gauge for him. And the reason for that is Chilemba's a very crafty guy. He's given other fighters, of high caliber, difficult times. With that being said, Bivol is young, and again, he has an extensive pedigree. I feel like the right approach for Bivol is to go back home, take it to the drawing board, which I know they will, and hone in on their mistakes. This is why many camps will now tell you they try not to look at fights because, previous fights or film, because first off, every fighter fights different towards other fighters. You might pick up a niche or two or a tail or two, but let's keep this in mind. And this is one of probably the things I hate most about boxing is people feel like, okay, well, this guy didn't do good against this guy, or this guy lost. Just because you either taken a loss or didn't do so well against a fighter doesn't mean you can't learn from that experience. If anything, it'll push you to learn more than a complete blowout, because you're going to feel like, well, what I'm doing is working. So with that being said, Eleider Alvarez is, again, he's a very, a determined guy, very strong. He's built like an ox, hits like a freaking mule. And, Bivol, to me, he's a little bit smaller frame, light heavyweight. But I really want to say that pedigree, that extensive amateur background, that pedigree, Eastern Europeans, man, like they understand the distance of inches, and they're real good at maintaining a distance and just staying enough out of your range, but in their range. And they generate good pop with every punch, just very good fundamental skills. And their determination and drive in camps is really second to no one. So with that being said, man, I want to say I would like to see him in with one more fight, somewhat, not, I hate to say gatekeeper, but not necessarily the elite guy, kind of a let's see what we've worked on type fight. And then I think he'll be ready. But if they were to throw him in with Eleider tomorrow, I think that his camp would, design a skill, a game plan, and they'll come out with the victory. Probably costly, but they'll come out with the victory.
First of all, before I go to Gus, I have to say that 1224529. She's her heart is melting over the avatar from Cesar with the baby with the bow tie. I had to make that note. She loves it. Going to you, Gus. Same question to you that I asked Cesar. Do you think Bivol is ready for the likes of Alvarez, particularly the Alvarez that we saw this Saturday night? And if not, what do you think Bivol will go? What direction do you think he will go?
Mike, I believe Dmitry Bivol is ready for unification with Eleider Alvarez. Now, if HBO had any serious aspirations of showcasing his skills as the heir apparent to, say, a Sergey Kovalev as a HBO mainstay at the 175-pound division, then Isaac Chilemba was clearly the wrong opponent to put him in the ring with. Because Isaac, a very decent, underrated fighter, has caused problems for every single opponent he's been in the ring with. And a lot of the times he hasn't, because he's not a marquee A-sider, hasn't been given the benefit of the doubt. Now, I thought Dmitry Bivol did a far better job against Chilemba than what Eleider Alvarez did. And that is why I think stylistically he has a tremendous chance, because if you can keep Alvarez in a cagey fight at relatively long distance, not open up too much, and that's what Bivol gauged with Chilemba. He said, look, basically this guy is not opening up too much. He's not throwing the third or the fourth or the fifth punch. He's a reactionary puncher, pretty much with a 1-2. Yes, he made the adjustment halfway and tried to lead a little bit more. But Bivol realized he wasn't opening up that much, so he was fairly content with that. I've got no problem with that. Now, you can argue if you're trying to, gain notoriety, trying to really, make a reputation and spread your mark, then you've really got to be stopping these sort of opponents. But no, I disagree with that. I think he has a tremendous amount of amateur pedigree, and he's fought, 52 jurisdictions, so he's very experienced around. I think he has far more dexterity than Eleider Alvarez. And you've got to remember, Alvarez is in his mid-30s as well, Mike. So, we don't know the longevity of these fighters, although Alvarez has not, really had too many fights in his professional ranks, with a bit of inactivity here and there as well. So, for a younger, more dexterous fighter who has the ability to keep the fight relatively at long range with his explosiveness, sort of coming in range and out, I think that sort of cause, Alvarez problems. But Alvarez can figure out, and he can begin to counterpunch. So there are possibilities, and hence there are dangers on both sides, absolutely. But I think Bivol is a cerebral boxer. I think they will calibrate a strategy primarily to avoid coming into that sort of mid-range, short range, and try and stay long and keep it explosive like that, and keep turning him and take advantages of Alvarez's, deficiencies in his stamina as well. And he doesn't throw a lot of punches as well, so he can also be outworked. So I think it can work, Mike. Now, if Kovalev is locked into a rematch, then Dmitry will probably have one more fight as well. So I think somewhere in 2019, I think the fight can definitely happen, and I would strongly favor Dmitry Bivol.
Interesting observation. Gail, Bo, your thoughts?
I think Bivol is still feeling out the professional ranks a little bit, and he does what he needs to do to win without putting himself at risk. And while that sometimes doesn't make the crowd too happy, and we did hear several boo birds in Atlantic City who were expecting more explosive.
Those boo birds were pretty loud in my section.
Yeah, and there was definitely some discussion in the media section on Twitter going on that wasn't exactly a thriller. But There have been a lot of fighters through boxing history who've been extremely successful being smart. And Bivol is a very smart fighter. He knows that Isaac Chilemba has made a lot of guys look bad. A lot of guys look bad. And he didn't want to be the guy that looked bad and, oh, by the way, got a little too careless and had something else, happen. He was clearly the more skilled fighter. He's explosively fast for a light heavyweight. It really is impressive. I do think sometimes, though, he has that habit of fighting to the level of his competition occasionally, falling in with the style of his competition, and he seems to kind of be willing to adapt and go along. And that's
Exactly.
the fight we saw is the kind of fighter Chilemba is more than it is Bivol. He's working very hard to endear himself to the American audience. He wants to be an international star. He's also said in the past that what he really wants to be remembered for at the end of his career is a fight that's so exciting that no one can ever forget it. The kind of fight everyone remembers. Not for titles, not for his record, but that he was in a gaudy ward kind of fight. And I've heard him say this more than once. Who doesn't like that kind of attitude with somebody? He wants to be in front of huge crowds. He's also talked about the fact he wants fights with big audiences, in person and on TV. So he's got the right attitude. Anybody who's worked with various promotional teams, managers, and crews, there is no one that's more of a pleasure to work with than Team Bivol, from his manager, Vadim Kornilov, on down. So, he's got all the potential in the world. He was really spoiling for that fight with Sergey, but they've got to go to plan B. And I really don't think there's anyone he needs to be terribly afraid of. As long as he's got enough preparation time, he's in the mix with anybody, despite the fact he's, had a dozen fights.
Your thoughts, Bo?
To piggyback on something Gail said, and it's good to see the feisty redhead carrying her championship belt again. I wonder where she got that from.
Thank you. I'll tell you who I got that from. At the time, it belonged to crazy Fernando Vargas.
But to piggy on what you said, if he wants to be in those kind of fights, my thing is you have to make people believe, number one, you're capable of doing those kind of fights, and number two, you got to make people want to see you. And Saturday was his chance to do that, and for some odd reason he elected not to. Now he might want to fight like that, but maybe his entire makeup just isn't that. Like, how some fighters, you try to make them boxers, and then once they get hit, everything goes out the window. So he might be, since he's such a cerebral fighter, he might be one of those fighters that might want to get in those type of fights, but then at the end of the day, his mind kicks in and it's like, no, rope this back, and let's find another avenue. So, but I will applaud him for this though. No one thought that he would be willing to face Eleider Alvarez, and he's come out and said he would do it. I think that somebody mentioned the rematch being in place, and if the rematch is in place, listen, and I get my man say so. I get what he's saying, but the problem with that is when we watch guys how they fight, we do judge them off their performance, because that's the barometer that we use, looking at who they could possibly fight and things of that nature. Now, yes, you're right. They did go into camp. I think he has the camp that's smart enough. I think even himself is smart enough, based off what Daniel was saying, that he said at the press conference, that he knows that from a defensive standpoint that he didn't look the best that night. So to fix that, for me, if you don't fight Eleider Alvarez, which is the Kovalev rematch might get there, then you might want to look at perhaps either Juan Pascual or Jürgen Bremer or somebody of that nature, that some good crafty veterans that could, just like Isaac Chilemba, that can also see, hey, how much have you improved? But honestly, in my opinion right now, I don't think he's based off just what I saw, because this is boxing, things can change. But I'm one of those people, just like me and my man would always say, sometimes you have a deficiency that you're going to need more than one camp to fix. So I don't think right now, based off what I saw, that he is ready for Eleider Alvarez. Only because, like I said, Eleider Alvarez, if you look at the guys he's been fighting, and he has that killer instinct switch that he doesn't turn off. And I think Bivol, because he's highly intelligent, will turn that killer instinct switch off sometime if it's something he doesn't see that he doesn't like. He'll turn it off and go into cruise control. And it's because he is green, and it's because he is sort of just one of those fighters realize, okay, there's other ways I can win. He will give a performance that he gave because that's just who he really is. So, but again, hats off to him for even wanting to take this fight now. He didn't before, but now that he feels he's ready, and we say this all the time, there's no training wheels when you're a champion. So now that he feels he's ready, hey, I mean, I'd even entertain a Badu Jack fight. I think that would even be good for him. Yeah, because that's a fight that would test the hell out of him.
Jack is number one right now. He's ranked number one.
Right. So. And that would be a fight that would just really test the hell out of him to see if you've made those improvements.
To cut some time here, I'm going to kind of split the last couple of fights up and just let certain individuals talk about those fights. I'll go to Daniel. I'll go back to you, Bo, and I'll go back to you, Cesar. Give you the opportunity to discuss Tevin Farmer, his win over Billy Dib that took place last week on Friday in Australia. Farmer winning the IBF belt. He did what I thought he was going to do. I felt that he was the superior fighter to an older Billy Dib all along. I never was a fan of Dib as a fighter, and he did what he had to do, controlled the action throughout, won just about every round, scored a knockdown in round 9. That kind of put the icing on the cake, if you will. The issue was after the fight, they asked Tevin Farmer who he wants in the ring. He just said it pointedly. Matter of fact, I work Gervonta Davis. Davis, who holds a belt also at 130 pounds, I think WBA version. They've had beef for years now. And Davis stated before Farmer's fight with Dib that while he wants to move up to lightweight, he'll make one exception, and that is a fight with Tevin Farmer. Now that Tevin Farmer has the belt, let's see what he does. Cesar,
and Mike,
Daniel, go ahead. Go ahead, 2K.
Let me take Cesar's spot, man, because I wrote the recap on that.
Okay, go with you there. Go with you 2K, Daniel, Gail.
Hey man, don't skip me.
You gotta make the baby cry. Come on, Mike.
You don't make the baby cry.
My apologies, man. I don't want to upset the baby. So, if he wants a word on this, go ahead.
Go ahead, Cesar.
Go ahead, man. You wrote the piece, but definitely, I'm gonna keep it short and simple.
Yeah,
and I'll let you squeeze in yours because I like what you wrote on the fact. But that fight. Tevin Farmer, definitely, I saw him winning that fight against Dib. And, the guy's slick. He's crafty. He somewhat reminds me, to a slight degree, with difference, of a Sweet Pea, But now when we're talking Gervonta Davis, here's the difference. Tevin Farmer, he moves around too much, expends too much energy. He wants to be slick, pop shots here and there. Even in the fight against Dib, I saw him, when he pulled back. Now, Dib looked like a fish out of water, but even that fish out of water at times, would land a sloppy jab here or there because, Ali used to have a saying. Was it Ali or was it Customado? Anyways, you don't outrun a train coming head on towards you by running backwards. You step to the right or you step to the left to get out of the way. And that's a concept that has stuck with me throughout boxing. And I feel like any boxer, that understands that typically has more success than others. And I just feel like, man, he's going to get in there with Tank Davis. Tevin Farmer doesn't have necessarily the most power in the division, if you guys know what I'm trying to say. The guy really can't hit, even though he knocked out, Billy Dib. Okay, great. He's not knocking out, Gervonta Tank Davis. I promise you that. On the contrary, Davis throws with bad intentions. Davis also has great timing. I just feel like he's just going to catch Farmer. He's going to catch him off balance, drop him, shake the equilibrium, get back up, and stop him. That's just my opinion. And I'm gonna cut it short because I want to hear 2K's piece.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm gonna go to the beginning with the Billy Dib fight. I'm gonna try to make it as short as I can. But Billy Dib incorporated Jeff Fennick into his corner. And Jeff Fennick drew up the right game plan. The only problem is he kind of changed the way Billy Dib actually fights. If y'all remember Dib when he fought for 50 Cent and SMS Promotions back when he fought Evgeny Gradovich the first time, and he was the IBF champion. And Gradovich took that fight on 2 weeks' notice, I believe it was. He ended up beating Billy Dib, taking his belt, rematched him, and knocked him out. That particular Billy Dib was not the Billy Dib you saw against Tevin Farmer. He was a guy who fights from mid-range distance, particularly on the outside. He uses his jab, has a little flash in the style. The Billy Dib that went in there with Tevin Farmer, that Jeff Fennick incorporated a game plan for, was a guy that was applying relentless pressure, and he was digging to the body. Now, that's the right game plan against a guy like Tevin Farmer because he likes to utilize movement. As my man Cesar said, he likes to be slick with the style. He likes to play the outside. Doesn't have much power. I think he has like 26 wins, and of those 26 wins, he has like 6 knockouts, something to that degree. So he doesn't really have much power. He's not sitting down on his punches because he's moving a lot. So Jeff Fennick had the right game plan, bully him, dig to the body. The problem is that Billy Dib was running inside. He was applying ineffective aggression. And a lot of people don't understand the difference between effective aggression and just pure aggression, right? Effective aggression is a guy that Gennady Golovkin has. That's something that he's mastered, right? A guy like Denis Shafikov, he's mastered effective aggression. If you don't believe me, watch that fight against Richard Comey. Beautifully displayed effective aggression and got around the jab or the long reach of Richard Comey that entire fight. So this is
No, I disagree with that.
Oh, nah. Denis Shafikov beat Richard Comey with no problem in the second half of that fight, man. I don't know what you're watching. But
I disagree with that. He was getting caught with the uppercut at will.
In the beginning, towards the end, he had Richard Comey's back up against the ropes the entire second half of that fight.
Who won that fight? Hold on.
Denis Shafikov did.
Okay, thank you.
And he won it. He won it with no problems. I had no problem with the scorecard. But anyway,
in Russia against fighting in front of one man and a dog.
That's fine. He still had the guy's back up against the ropes the entire second half of that fight. I suggest you go watch that fight again, boss. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying in the first half, but the second half of that fight, it was not competitive. And I was yelling at the TV because I was actually going for Comey the entire time. But he got out pressured. He didn't know what to do. But anyway, this is what Billy Dib was not able to do against Tevin Farmer. He didn't apply effective aggression. He was getting caught coming in the entire fight. And that's exactly what happened in the 9th round where he ended up getting knocked down. Again, we go back to punch placement. And this is what I was trying to tell Lo about Eleider Alvarez. It's not necessarily about the power behind the shot. It's about the placement. And as I talked about those 3 points, Billy Dib was hit in that second point, below the jaw on the back, or the back of the jaw below the earlobe. Also square on the jaw. That's what actually made his legs give up. And that's how he ended up getting knocked down by a guy with like a 20% knockout rate. So it was the right game plan that Jeff Fennick drew up, but Billy Dib just didn't execute it properly as far as applying effective aggression. And he lost easily in that fight. Now, as far as it going to Tank Davis, Davis applies effective aggression a lot better than Billy Dib. He's a much smarter fighter than Billy Dib. He has better punch placement than Billy Dib. He also employs the shoulder roll. Now, I don't like his stance. He kind of reminds me of an Adrian Broner, and maybe him hanging out with Adrian Broner coupled with Floyd Mayweather. He's become that particular type of fighter. But I think the ability that he has to stalk his fighters, and also understand that Tevin Farmer has a tendency of getting caught in phone booth type of fights. This is what we saw against Kenichi Ogawa. Even though I thought Tevin Farmer won that fight, he gave Kenichi Ogawa a lot of opportunities in that fight, which allowed the judges to give that fight to him. And he actually got caught in some firefights with Billy Dib. So I expect him to do the same thing against Gervonta Tank Davis. But the difference is that, like I said, Tank is a much more cerebral fighter than Billy Dib is. And he'll end up stopping Tevin Farmer, I think, late. I'm going to pick like round 10 if that fight were to happen. But it's an excellent fight. It's a unification. Like, Mike said, Tank has the WBA super title right now at junior lightweight. Right now, I've been following him. He's not really been talking too much about the fight. The only thing he said since, even though he did mention that he wants to go to lightweight, but if Tevin Farmer were to beat Billy Dib, that he'd stay at junior lightweight to try to get that unification. Since Tevin Farmer's won, the only thing he said is that he would knock Tevin Farmer out. It's the only thing he said. And meanwhile, Tevin is like, hey, man, give me that fight. So we'll see what happens, man. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but it'd be a good matchup if it does happen.
I see Gail is left. Hope she'll have her back. Maybe I hope the chat didn't kick her out. I'm going to see what's up with her. Go to Daniel. Thoughts on Farmer's win over Billy Dib?
I like that point out by 2K Day where it showed Billy Dib being changed from a mid-range fighter to an inside fighter. But it also shows that a lot of times when a fighter's set in his ways, it's tough to change him from something that he's not. And Billy Dib is not an inside fighter. No matter the game plan he put it in his place, it showed that he can't really do it at this stage of his career, which he retired after the fight, actually.
Yep.
But Tevin Farmer did everything that Tevin Farmer does. He fights from distance. He lands combinations. He makes sure he doesn't get hurt too much. He does get into firefights from time to time. He is from Philly. Like, you can't be completely from Philly without having some firefights.
Yep.
But it's what I expected. Now, when it came to Tank, I'm going to be in the minority here, I guess, the two people that are talking. There's a reason to me that Floyd Mayweather kept Tevin Farmer as far away from Tank as possible. Because I think he sees that Tank, while being good, aggressive inside, while trying to land in, could probably get outboxed pretty easily by Tevin Farmer at this stage. He's improved. I'll admit, Tank has improved since then. But Farmer has that style that makes you work to get the victory. And Tank is going to have to go into it. And we don't really know a lot about Tank's gas tank. So say Tarver does take him to the distance and take him to the 10th, 11th round. Tank might be tired, and then Farmer might land a good combination or be able to take over those rounds just based on the fact that he's more active. So I could see Farmer winning that fight. Tank has the shot as long as he has the power going into it, but now you also have the concept of he's already thinking himself at lightweight. He's already looking past the division, even though he said he's going to fight Farmer. So we have to see. Hopefully they'll get that fight. It's been brewing for years. Those two have been going at it via social media or face-to-face for years. But at this stage, even now, I'll pick Farmer.
I will go. I'm going with Tank on this one because of the advantage in size and in power. And Cesar is right. Farmer does move too much, and in that type of fight, with the added pressure of being in that big opportunity, I think fatigue will set in for Farmer, and I think Tank will catch him late. But he's going to give him hell early. I wouldn't be surprised if Farmer would have beat him, find a way to beat him. But in that potential matchup, I would go with Tank. Listen,
hold on, man.
Go ahead, Bo.
All right, Daniel, you're not alone. I've argued on a consistent basis with my two counterparts about this. I've argued with them. So you're not alone. Listen, I'm of the mind frame that I do believe Tevin Farmer, who has been seeking this fight, who has wanted this fight, who has been salivating at the teeth, even rolled up on him because he wants it this bad. I actually believe Tevin Farmer, like you said, can outbox Gervonta Davis. Now, the biggest key is going to be what happens if he gets caught, because the thing about Tank is, like you said, he is that hard puncher, And he's one of those dudes that when he gets you hurt, he's an assassin. He's gonna try to finish you off. But I think Tevin Farmer, just off the fact that he can, y'all say he moved too much, but he moved just enough that works for him. And Tank Davis don't like really moving that much at all. He likes only being able to come forward to trap you in the corner and unload on you. And if
hold on, Bo. I said he don't move enough. I said he gets caught in them firefights. That's what's his downfall.
Okay. Now that part I agree with, that he can get caught in the firefights, and if he gets in a firefight, he don't have the firepower
absolutely
to get in those firefights with Tank. But I like it. Now, of course, you know, it might change as close to the fight get as you watch how they train, everything like that. But I actually like this fight. I think Tevin Farmer, after all these years of really wanting a piece of that ass, I think he didn't figure out, I'm gonna beat this dude.
Bo,
I really think he'll do it.
What he wants is a piece of that payday. You know, Tevin Farmer, that's really what he wants, is that payday.
I think it's personal. I think it's personal at this point.
No,
I agree with Mike.
I think it's got personal with that brother now.
This is personal. You don't roll up on somebody like that with it.
Hold on. Let me finish this point. Go ahead.
There is. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, there is, you know, personal beef between them. There's mad history, but you got to understand, with every ice cream, there's its cherry on top, and that cherry just happens to be big and sweet. So it's like, you know, I can have personal beef with you in the boxing game, and we've seen it all the time. But if it doesn't make financial sense, it's not going to happen. Nor will I push the envelope. But what it's doing, it's generating interest. It's generating guys like us to talk about that situation. But Bo, to reiterate what you were saying, and Daniel, you know, you guys made interesting points on why you feel that Farmer would win, you know. But to me, someone that's going to be, you know, Tank is someone that can stop him in his tracks with good shots. I just don't think Farmer has the power, nor will he be willing to do so. He's from Philly, but the guy has 6 knockouts for a reason in 24 fights, because he will not sit there that long. He'll sit there a little bit, and then he's out the door, moving around, you know, and I just see it playing into Tank's game.
Well, let me add this too about that whole emotional factor, man. Understand that that emotional thing that Bo is talking about, he really wants that ass, no homo, is that's been a downfall for a lot of these Philly and Detroit fighters. I made that point on one of my videos. You know what I'm saying? Just think J-Rock and Jamal Charlo. Remember, Bo, me and you were going at it. You had J-Rock, I had Jamal. And I was saying the whole time, I said the reason why J-Rock will lose to Jamal Charlo is because he's trying to play that alpha male mentality. And that's what a lot of them cats from Philly do. I said, but the problem is Jamal Charlo is a real alpha male. You know, and the problem with a lot of Philly fighters is they get entangled in that particular persona, that they kind of throw a lot of what they do good out the window because they let their emotions get in the way. It's the same thing with Detroit fighters. Look at Tony Harrison versus Willie Nelson. Why you think he got caught late in that fight? Because it was all emotions. He threw everything he knew how to do out the window. Same thing with Jared Hurd. Winning the fight, both those fights, winning the fight handily. And then just, you know, got complacent in the ring, ended up getting caught. So that's what I'm afraid of when it comes to Tevin Farmer. I think he's a little bit too emotional, dog.
I agree.
Okay, well, to counter that though, the Jared Hurd thing, that guy Harrison just mentally wasn't there, and I saw that in the previous fight. Yeah. I think Tevin Farmer is a little bit more mentally tough. And then you mentioned something about J-Rock and Charlo. This is the great thing about being old. I can tell you, I don't remember that conversation. I
would feel not right having this conversation going and not have Gus at least give a little bit of word about this. So, Gus, your thoughts on a potential bout between Farmer and Tank Davis? Are you there, Gus? I don't think Gus is there. Here's the question. So I'm going to move on. Here's the question. Look, I was chided by Gus last week about my lack of interest for this fight between Berto and Devon Alexander. I'm going to leave it up to y'all. If you want to talk about it, fine. If not, move on. If you do, you know who you're not going to hear from? Me. So it's on y'all. It's on y'all if you want to talk about this fight.
I've heard that it was a robbery. What do y'all think?
From what I kept it up on Twitter when I was in Atlantic City, and people were like, "What?" When first they said it was a bad fight,
right?
And then second, everybody was saying, "How in God's name did Berto get that decision?" Which, by the way, that was the second eldest Alexander family had on that fight, because unfortunately on the undercard for Kovalev Alvarez early on, his brother Devon Alexander, he lost his first fight.
Sure did.
And on that sense, that was a fight where I got there afterwards. I asked Gail how it looked, and it looked like more like Alexander didn't do enough to win the rounds. Now, in that sense, for Vaughn, he was fighting again at 168. I think this is a case where 160 is the best weight for him, because he has a lot more power at 160. When it comes to Devin and Berto, did this really do anything for either guy? It does, because it doesn't move the barometer, even if the fight was pretty good as far as getting them into contention. It certainly doesn't do anything for Berto when the general sentiment is you didn't win.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I don't know if it's kind of hard for me to speak on this because it was a shitty ass fight. But for me, this is what I've seen. I can't get mad if Berto wins the decision, or that he won the decision anyway. Simply because, to me personally, man, Devon Alexander took his foot off the gas once again. He did the same thing against Victor Ortiz. Now, in that fight, I don't think that fight was a draw. I believe Devon Alexander did enough early to win that fight. But he did the same thing, man. Like, he was winning the fight handily. Then for some reason, he took his foot off the gas. Hell, he even admitted it at the end of the fight that he took his foot off the gas. You know, Kevin Cunningham is in the corner telling him, "Hey, man, what the fuck are you doing? Pick it up." You know what I'm saying? So not only did the fighter acknowledge that he took his foot off the gas, but so did his trainer, right? So I can't get mad if judges saw the second half of the fight go towards Andre Berto. I just can't get mad at that. But it really didn't matter to me, because at the end of the day, the winner is slated to face the winner of Danny Garcia versus Sean Porter after their September 8th bout. I mean, they're going to lose anyway. The winner of that fight was going to lose to one of those guys anyway. And then, of course, Devon Alexander wanted to face Keith Thurman possibly. He would have lost that fight too. So at the end of the day, it really don't matter.
So I guess the conversation is finished, because again, I don't have nothing to add. I don't have nothing to add.
Is it bad for me to say I didn't watch that fight because I generally wasn't interested in it?
And why do you think I'm not talking about it? Because hey,
look, man, honestly, like talking about Devin, and that's one of his problems is he gets so involved in just strictly boxing, won't take chances, and he starts cruising. And I'm gonna make that relation to our last conversation. But that's the problem with those type of boxers is they I don't know, man. It's like they go into a cruise control, and they're not willing to gamble, and honestly, the fans don't enjoy it. People lose interest, and when a guy is hungry and comes at them and throws punches, chances are the fight ends up going their way, regardless of what you see. So, I mean, because boxing's judged on three things: effective aggression. Hold on, I'm trying to think. Ring general and
come on, man.
Yeah. You listen, man. It's late, bro.
Effective aggression, ring generalship, accuracy, and defense, bro.
Yeah, which also equates to style. But yeah, no doubt, man. What can I say?
You know, Devon Alexander, I was done with him when he lost to Aaron Martinez. That's his name.
Yeah.
I was done with him then.
That was a bad and a bad
It-
look. You shouldn't have lost to that guy.
Yeah.
That was
Right.
supposed to be a soft touch for him.
Right. Since I have just about the entire crew from Three Kings, I didn't put up any news thing in the docket, so I'm gonna give Cesar, 2K, Bo, as well as Daniel, if you like, to mention any news tidbits. Give each of you guys a quick minute or two to mention any news tidbits that came by your way, either via Three Kings or Daniel with you, and who you follow on boxing before we go previewing the one main fight of the weekend. Started off with you, 2K.
Oh, with me? Okay. I'm like the go-to guy now. So we got I'm not sure if you guys heard about this yet. I was actually going to write something on it earlier today, but I got caught up doing something. But Demetrius Andrade versus Billy Joe Sanders is officially official. They found a place. They're going to be fighting in the TD Garden in Boston, October 20th. So I'm expecting Demetrius Andrade to take that belt. Hopefully he doesn't go into the fight as the same Demetrius Andrade that fought Koke, because if he does, he loses this fight easily. But if he's the Demetrius Andrade that fought Willie Nelson, then he's absolutely going to annihilate Billy Joe Sanders. So we'll see.
What's the word from you, Cesar?
Hold on, I'm with you. I just had to take it off mute. So I'm getting that information for you right now. And I wanted to say, so we know Anthony Joshua has an upcoming bout next month, but he is slated in already to compete. I'm just trying to get the exact month for you guys. News just broke that he's also slated that he's going to fight at Wembley in April 13, 2019. So, I mean, man, that's pretty crazy because, I mean, so that means they're definitely expecting to leave that Povetkin fight unscathed. That's a statement right there. Because honestly, in my opinion, I felt like he should take several months after that fight, especially if it's grueling, and to just let his body recover. But maybe they see something or expecting something different. I don't know.
Well, that's been out there even before the Povetkin fight.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
That's been on the docket for a while.
Yep.
That's actually what some people thought that they expected the Wilder fight to be.
Exactly.
In April. But looking at Eddie Hearn and looking at his recent moves, that may not be able to happen. The main thing that I saw is that it's starting the cards are starting to shape up pretty decently now for Canelo Triple G. The rematch you're gonna have the middleweight fight, David Lemieux versus Spike O'Sullivan, which that'll just be entertaining,
right?
Just for the sake of entertainment. There's a chance that it's like a 50-50 maybe whether Chocolatito will show up there or will stay at Superfly 3, which, by the way, the conference was today. And there's also a very, very high chance that Jaime Munguia is actually going to be back on this card.
Yep.
Now, think about that for a minute.
Yep.
He fought in June to win the title. He fought, and then Munguia fought in July, his mandatory. And he's going to fight most likely in September. That is a very, very good active schedule for a kid who's admitting that he's still learning to be a champion. That's really, really good. And it does show that Golden Boy is starting to really, really build up some of their guys. One of the things they got accused of is they're relying too much on Canelo while making their guys go through the ringer. Well, they found something in Munguia. So that's going to be very, very interesting fight. Now, the question to me is going to be is, are they going to move Chocolatito from Superfly 3 to this card?
From what I've heard, he's on there. I saw it earlier this morning. I'm talking probably like 11 o'clock a.m. my time, which is Central Time, that he's on there officially. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe it might change again, but I'd seen that a long time ago, earlier today anyway.
From your end, Bo, what you hearing?
Listen, I got the best news. I got the best news out there, okay? I'm finna drop this. This is breaking news. Y'all don't know. Y'all better pay attention. And Jeff Horn might be fighting Anthony Mundine.
Yeah.
What?
Jeff Horn
Anthony
may actually be
Mundine.
fighting Anthony Mundine.
Yep.
Okay.
That's
Australian
true.
Super Bowl.
It's
My-
true.
Don't make me mute you on my show, man.
Well, I was
My
expecting
Australian contact.
big. I was expecting Mike Tyson's return or something.
Man, my Australian contact.
Versus Mundine.
Listen, my Australian contact has reached out to me and told me that a mega fight is going down. So, but
That's almost on the same level as Chavez Jr. If he beats Moore,
Sergio Moore.
fight Martinez.
Yeah.
More. So now Martinez is in the mix. What?
no, actually, something that I'm interested in is Andre Durrell might be going to 175, and that could be dangerous for
I'm
him.
not interested in that.
Oh God, no.
Yeah.
If you told me Anthony, I'll be excited, but no, Andre, no.
So
Yeah.
that's
said,
one thing there.
I'm gonna catch you guys on the upside. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks
Good
for joining me,
talk.
Cesar. And a quick word, quickly, for those who want to talk boxing or anything else with you, let the folks know where they can find you.
Man, you can find me on 3kingsboxing.com. You can find me on Truth and Facts, Sports Talk, and find me here on Pound for Pound.
I appreciate you for being on the show, and I hope to have you on again soon, brother.
All right, man. We'll do
All right,
it.
Cesar.
All right, everybody. Have a good night.
All right, you have a good one. I'll give a quick word here. I wrote this for Three Kings. Japanese prospect contender by the name of Hiroki Okada, who's ranked top 10 by all the major sanctioning bodies. It was announced yesterday via Top Rank that they have signed him to a deal, and he will make his top rank in U.S. debut on the September 14th undercard between Jose Ramirez and Antonio Orozco. I've seen Okada fight a couple of times. Good prospect, pretty good height for the division, 5'9", and from Japanese observers who've seen him fight, saying that as good as he's looked in the ring, they feel he may fight to the level of his opposition. In short, there's a gear that he can even fight up to. So when you watch the Ramirez Orozco bout September 14th, look out for a Japanese fighter by the name of Okada. Early on, looking at the plans here, it looks like to me that should Okada win and should Ramirez win, don't be surprised if you see those two fight at some point in 2019. So that's my little bit of news for the week. Let's move on and start previewing this upcoming fight between Rojas and Jojo Diaz. Rojas, I believe, who has a version of the WBA belt. Correct me if I'm wrong, fellas. He's fighting Jojo Diaz, who just lost a few months back to Gary Russell Jr., I think 4 months ago. Yep. I'll just leave it up to you guys, your level of interest, A, and B, your thoughts on this fight between Rojas and Diaz.
First off, this is the first fight in the partnership that Golden Boy has brokered with Facebook to start airing some of their cards on Facebook Watch in the U.S. And then I think they're the Facebook page for the Ring Magazine internationally. So this is a big deal for them as far as the media front. The fight itself, Rojas is coming off a pretty decent layoff, and he has the regular WBA featherweight title. So in a sense, Jojo Diaz is fighting to become Leo Santa Cruz's mandatory. And I'm glad he's getting back into the ring, not taking that drastic of a layoff, because there is a worry when a lot of guys when they take their first loss that they may wait a while, and it gives them time to be complacent, and it also gives them time to make dumb decisions. JoJo's getting right back into it, and there's a decent chance that he can get the victory. And I'm sorry that if you give me the prospect of a JoJo Diaz versus Leo Santa Cruz fight, you better put that thing in StubHub.
Yeah, that has action-packed bout written all over. I just go to everybody else here on the panel. Your thoughts on the upcoming fight between Rojas and Diaz?
Yeah, Mike. I think on paper, Mike, this fight has the potential to be a fight of the year, a battle of attrition, and in Jesus Rojas, he's been in plenty of dogfights, and make no mistake, this fight is going to be a dogfight. You know, he's come on the back of knocking out punches. You know, he fought Claudio Moreno, a Dominican Republican puncher in his last fight. You know, Moreno was the guy who stopped Jorge Lara in the first round. You know, another fighter, and I think this fight is going to have similarity, an orthodox southpaw between the Rojas and the Jorge Lara fight, because Rojas slightly taller, sort of, you know, quite bigger for a sort of featherweight, you know, 5'7". But he's a methodical fighter, Mike. He doesn't start fights early. He's methodically looking at the opponent. You can see him almost languishing a little bit on the back foot early on. But once he gets going, he's going to walk you down. That's his style, and he's going to be on you. He'll exert physical and mental pressure. So his vulnerabilities are early. And I mean, he had that trouble when he fought Jorge Arce, you know, a veteran within his 68th fight. You know, he got caught early as well. Yep. And he's a little bit like that. He showed that, you know, a little bit against Abraham Lopez as well. But if you do what Jorge Lara, what he was doing, he was punching heavy almost the entire fight. There was no subtle, no variation of his punches. So although he was having the dominance early on, but some headbutts and certainly Lara's eye getting blocked up. But you could see Rojas slowly working him out, slowly understanding his timing and realizing that the punches are coming pretty much the same velocity and power as well. So then he started to work the body and the head and make those adjustments. So he was having, and that's what he does. But inside the pocket, he can get caught as well. And what Lara was doing, the combination he was firing is the same thing what Mike Tyson used to fly, was hooking and uppercutting with the same hand. And that's something what JoJo Diaz does do. He does dig to the body with his left, and he uppercuts with his left hand as well. So in the pocket, that could, you know, that has the potential of having some tremendous exchanges. Now, Rojas is not really blessed with too much hand speed or foot movement. He's slow, methodically sort of plodding forward. But JoJo Diaz is not that sort of fighter as well. He wants to have the fight at short range, you know, inside the pocket as well. We saw what Russell did to him later on in the fight, in the second half of the fight, utilizing a little bit more movement, and unfortunately JoJo Diaz's sort of output and his approach just started to capitulate a little bit. But I don't think Rojas is going to do that. He's going to be pretty much in his face. So he's going to give plenty of opportunities for Diaz to even counter punch as well. And he's very good at that inside the pocket. So there's strengths and weaknesses to both inside. Now, Diaz is a little bit younger. I think he's 6 years younger. But Rojas is battle-hardened, Mike. He's a heavy puncher as well. I think he's fought the heavier punches. I think Diaz's chance is going to be earlier, but I don't think he's got the firepower. Well, hard to say, but Rojas, you know, can get caught cold, but I just feel Rojas might be a little bit tougher in this fight, Mike. I think it's just that experience, you know, the battle hardened, you know, the adjustments he can make as the fight progresses as well. And but it's going to be a tremendous fight. I can't wait.
Any quick word on this, Bo, and 2K?
I mean, I agree pretty much with everything both Gus and Daniel said about this fight. Gus made a good point about the Jorge Arce fight and how he got caught. That's one of the points that I was getting ready to make. One of the things I will add to his conclusion is that Jojo Diaz does have the ability to box. So what he needs to do in this fight, man, he needs to learn how to, or at least he needs to effectively judge distance very well in this fight. He didn't do that good enough against Gary Russell Jr. But, you know, Russell Jr. has that hand speed. He has that good boxing ability from mid-range distance. Now, Russell Jr. is not really a mover, which pisses me off about his style. But this guy, Rojas, is going to be moving in consistently the whole fight. It's going to be in his face, as Gus just mentioned. So Jojo Diaz is going to have to go back to his days or his ability to be able to box anyway, and to be able to judge that distance perfectly and catch him while he's coming in, keep moving laterally, keep your back off the ropes, keep the fight in the center of the ring. It's exactly what he's going to have to do against a fighter like this, and don't get caught in those firefights. You know what I'm saying? So as long as he's doing that, as long as he's allowing Rojas to get inside of him and to make it a nice inside type of fight, he might end up losing that battle, man. And like you said, it's the war of attrition. And if it becomes that, I think Jojo Diaz loses that particular battle.
And because we're running a little bit long here, I'm going to start shutting things down right now. I'm going to go around the panel here. First of all, I want to thank Gail for joining us. If you want to talk boxing or anything else with her, you can check her out on Twitter at PR Pro San Diego. You can check out her work also at Communities Digital News. That's COMM DIGI News. That's Community Digital News, Digi News. I want to thank Scorsese for joining us as well. If you want to check out him on YouTube and G Plus especially, you can check him out at my low place hashtag MLPF. I believe Jacob, who also joined us on the show earlier, check him out on Twitter at JRATM. On Twitter. Going to go around the rest of the panel here. I also thank Cesar for joining us as well. Go around the rest of the panel here, starting with you, Daniel, from the Inscriber. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk NBA, specifically the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Raucus99. And like I said, do my show with the folks at 4Boxing News. We did the podcast yesterday. Should be up on 4BoxingNews.com right now. And like I said, we're going to definitely probably preview these other fights, because after next week, after we talk about Jojo Diaz, there is now the interesting tidbit of Showtime now airing the Carl Frampton fight. And I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but a Tyson Fury fight, should he win, could possibly face Deontay Wilder this December.
Absolutely.
Go to you, Gus. Gus from Corruption and Boxing. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk music, let the people know where they can hit you up.
Seems like everybody on this show is a boxing journalist, Mike. But no, Mike, not me. Corruption in Boxing, Mike, on YouTube, but professional music journalist. So that's something.
That's more than enough. That's more than enough. 2K from Three Kings Boxing, also from the 2K Gods of Boxing. For folks who want to talk the sweet science or anything else, let the people know where they can find you.
Well, it's Prodigy of Boxing.
Prodigy of Boxing. I'm sorry, Prodigy of Boxing Talk. I went by your old name. My bad.
Yeah, I changed the name. I didn't change the name on the picture. So, but really, all that matters is threekingsboxing.com, and that's. We're putting out a lot of content every single day. We report on all 17 divisions, and we report on women's boxing. So you're going to run into a bunch of stuff that you've never even heard of once you go to that website. But it's going to be a damn good learning experience. We're getting a lot of interviews. We do a lot of video promotions for fights that are coming up. So Three Kings Boxing is where it's at.
And last but certainly not least, Bo. Truth and facts about sports, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to follow the adventure of you and your daughter, or for those who are interested in the apps, let them know about the apps that you got going right now. Bo, let them know where they can find you.
Hey, man. Of course, always saving the best for last. Appreciate that, brother.
The oldest for last.
Of course, you can find me Truth and Fact Sports Talk. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at truth_factbox1. You can also find me right here, pound for pound. Then, of course, you can catch anything that I write and all my interviews with fighters and trainers on 3kingsboxing.com. That's the website, or you can go to the Facebook page, and that's 3 Kings Boxing. You can catch me on any my man Prodigy of Boxing, and even sometime with Daniel. And just glad to be here. Thank you for having me here. And of course, the adventures of my daughter, they're getting less and less. She's 18 now, so I ain't cool no more. But I'll bring you guys what I can, man.
Again, go ahead.
What's Mike's surname? Can you remember?
Mike who?
Mike Pound for Pound. You
Wilson.
always seem to get it wrong.
Mike.
Yeah, you always call him Mike Williams or something on your side.
Oh, Bo messing up names again. Is that what I'm hearing? Like Carnello?
No, it's Michael Williams. I think you're talking about Mike. I think you're talking about Michael Williams. Yeah, I get them confused because there's a Michael Wilson and there's a Michael Williams.
Oh, you're talking about Michael Williams. Yeah.
I get them confused. You're right.
No problem. As I said earlier, I want to thank EJ Boxing Live. Low Place was in the chat. 1224529, aka Lisa, for joining us on the live YouTube chat. I want to thank them and their comments as well. For those who want to talk boxing with me, I said at the beginning of the show, I'll repeat that. Check me out on Twitter. You know what it is, Brother JR. At Brother JR76. And as I said earlier, if you want to check out all things about Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, P4P Boxing Report.wordpress.com. Just check the Router page, find the links to all the pages, Facebook, YouTube, G+. We're on social media all over just about, and we can also check the links where to find us, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music. Damn near everywhere there's a streaming thing outside of Spotify, you will find us there. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Jesus Rojas and Jojo Diaz. We will also do a preview of the fights that Daniel talked about earlier. Carl Frampton, he's going to be fighting Luke Jackson. Tyson Fury, he's continuing in his comeback. He's going to fight on the undercard. Listen, we talked about Eleider, Alvarez, and Kovalev as the upset of the year. If that's not Christopher Rosales and his stoppage win over Diego Higa this past April, is a close second place. Rosales is returning to the ring to make the first defense of that WBC flyweight title against Patty Barnes on the undercard of that Frampton and Fury card. So we may well talk about that fight as well. So yeah, for Gail, for Jacob, for Low Place, for Daniel, Cesar, 2K, Bo, Gus, I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 218 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.